Welcome to the Maker's Playbook, the podcast where we talk all about what it's really like to make a living from the things you make. I'm your host, Rebecca Igiskara. Hello. We are back this week for the regular interview episodes. If you missed last week, I had one of our occasional solo episodes all about those two dirty words to so many makers and artists out there, sales and marketing. It's the holidays, y'all, and the stress is real. Whether you are just starting out trying to sell your work for the first time around these crazed holiday deadlines, or if you've been doing it for a while and trying to figure out how to get better results, either way, it can be a real mind game. I hope everyone is making sure to take some time to take care of themselves and give the good old nervous system a bit of a breather. All right. I could keep rambling on about all of that, but in some ways, it kind of feels tangentially connected to today's conversation with Bryan Hopkins. Because for much of today's chat, we discuss being conscious of our life's choices. How being a full-time maker and artist isn't only a business or even a passion, but more a way of life. There are certain choices we can make to make that life more stressful or more in tune with the kind of making practice we really want to have. Essentially, to loosely quote Bryan, what do you need and what are you willing to have or not have in order to make your dream maker's life actually happen? Let's dig in. Hey, Bryan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Rebecca. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. I'm so grateful for making the time. I feel like every time I ask anybody and this random girl sending a message on Instagram to say, hey, can you spare an hour of your life? It's a really big deal for people to say yes. Well, for people who don't know you, how would you introduce yourself?
I would say my name is Bryan Hopkins and I'm a potter. That's
awesome.
How I typically introduce myself.
And do you have to do the thing where somebody looks at you and then you go ceramics and then they still look at you and you reference Ghost, unfortunately?
Oh, gosh, no, I never referenced Ghost because I thought it was a terrible movie when it came out. Right. No, it all depends on the mood I'm in. Okay, so if I'm at a party and I like the people who are there and someone just asked me, somebody's new love interest asked me, so what do you do? I'll say I'm an artist. Okay, but if I'm at a party I don't want to be at or an opening I don't really, care for, I'll say I'm a potter. And it's like the needle scratches across the record and everything stops and the person's looking at me like I just grew a horn out of my forehead, which basically I did by telling them I'm a potter because I doubt they've ever met one before, right?
Right.
So I'll say I'm an artist, but that's, but then anything can be art, right? So you could be, they have no idea. And I'll let them narrow it down or ask me more questions if they really care.
Right.
If not, they're just being polite and they don't want to know, oh, I work with porcelain. It's reduction fired in a Cone 11 kiln. It's all translucent. And they're looking for the next person to talk to. They just wanted to say hi.
Yeah.
But that's a long-winded version of me introducing myself.
That is fantastic because that reminds me of one of my greatest pet peeves, second only to the sound people make when they eat, is when you see somebody on the street, I used to live in Chicago, so you're walking down the sidewalk and someone says, oh, hi, how are you? It's actually just one sentence that ends, all they're saying is hi, but by asking, how are you, I stop and answer the question and you see them like awkward. Oh, you didn't actually, just say hi. Don't add how are you.
Oh, wait, you thought I cared. Oh, right. Wait, hold. Okay.
Crap.
Sorry for the confusion.
Well, presuming everybody except for my mom and her best friend logging on actually care about pottery, and since we talked about porcelain and reduction, give us kind of the 3,000-foot view of how you got into this in the first place. Lifelong dream, accidental, stumbled upon.
It's never, I guess it's been therapy. But anyway, so I was a math major in undergrad school and I needed to take an art class to graduate. And so I was lucky enough to get into a ceramics class. I didn't like hand building. I didn't like the feel of the clay. And that all changed, though, when I got to the potter's wheel. And things kind of clicked. And I don't know if you've ever had that experience where something just feels right. It almost like fills this void that was there that you didn't know was there. And it just made sense. And I wasn't any good at it, but I was determined, and it was a skill I could learn. Mm-hmm. So I started making pots. I took some independent studies. I dropped my math major, started doing like the little farm market craft show, taking a sheet of plywood and two sawhorses and a sheet and selling my pots for 1/10 of what they should have been sold for. But I was making money off of something that I was doing. And I wasn't accumulating things in anyone's attic, which is always a good thing.
And a difficult accomplishment in pottery.
It is. And so then I decided that I needed actual like formal education in ceramics of like glaze mixing and chemistry and just how to do stuff that I missed out on not being a BFA. And so I thought, well, then I'll go to graduate school. And that is a totally wrong reason to go to graduate school, because you don't learn about those aspects unless that's what you want to do. You learn how to think about ceramics, but nobody told me not to do it. Okay, so I applied to a bunch of different schools. I got into a couple. So I went to grad school and I started making art with a capital A and stopped making functional work that could ever support me. Because again, I was an important artist now, right? My head got lodged further and further up my, and so I got out of grad school, and it took me a few years to basically unlearn what I thought I had learned in grad school. Yeah. So for me and some other people I know, it wasn't the most positive experience for my career. I could have went different ways. I should have taken workshops with people whose work I admired. I should have went and done a residency somewhere maybe. And it was kind of a misdirected approach to becoming a ceramic artist, but I had no illusions ever of being an artist. That was not something anybody in my youth ever said I could be as a possibility. People were thrilled because I was thinking about going into the military to get that to pay for college, and people were thrilled about that. People in my high school, my parents were happy to hear I was going to, go that way, because there was no expectation other than they wanted me to go to college. Mm-hmm. So, but that's how I got into it. And then when I was at grad school, I met the woman who is now my, partner, wife, and her immediate family lived in Buffalo, New York. Okay. So we came here to visit for a couple weeks. I found really cheap studio space. I found a nice little community of people, and it's cheap to live here. So we settled here 26 years ago, and it's been a good place ever since.
This is a common thread that I'm finding a lot in these conversations, is that balance between making the life that you want and that you dream of, but in some ways our desire for this craft is so great that we're willing to kind of sacrifice other things, right? So if you had dreamed of living in New York City, it's kind of like, that's nice, but I can be a potter and live in Buffalo.
Right. Yeah, because UPS and FedEx exist, right?
Also. The internet,
you can ship things anywhere. Yeah. And even like when we moved here in 95, 96, it was the infancy really my infancy into the internet. But I knew that I could ship work anywhere. Yep. And I didn't want to ever have a full-time job. I had a full-time job once for about 9 months, and it's a completely overrated experience. I don't recommend it to anybody. I definitely recommend trying to string together 3 or 4 part-time jobs, right? Because that's less stressful. But it gives you the opportunity, to have a little bit of time. And I only have 1 part-time job now. I had 3 at one point, but it was all just to support the habit, right? Yep. The habit being ceramics. I knew I didn't want to, again, have a full-time job to do that, because that just sucks all your energy, or all my energy anyway. I don't have the mindset to do that.
Yeah. I also find that it only works for like a period of time. Like if you if you have this job and either you have enough autonomy with it, if you're work from home where you can get up an hour early, check on a kiln, have your breakfast, and then sit down at the computer kind of thing, that's one thing. If you've got to commute and go into an office and then you're coming back at 5 and then you've got to go to a community studio and all this kind of stuff, like when I first started my business, I didn't take out any business loans. And so I worked part-time jobs, just like you're saying. And I got about 4 hours of sleep for a year because I was being a barista in the morning, getting up, doing the 4:30 a.m. opening shift, working a full shift, coming back to my apartment, sitting at the computer, and no clients knew I had just worked 8 hours because it started so damn early.
Right.
That I could do that at 24. I
Yeah.
don't want to do that at 35 now.
Right.
Like my body just doesn't recover like that.
Yeah.
So
I was a barista as well. And that was that was a really fun job. It really was. I took it way too seriously, though. I was probably an asshole to work for. So I ended up being like one of the managers. But I would do the opposite. I would go in like at 6 at night, work until 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
Go to a friend's bar on the way home because it was on my walk home.
Yep.
Drink way too much, sleep way too late, go into the studio for 2 hours, and then go back to the barista job.
Yep.
It was this cycle that I was getting into. And like you said, I was doing that when I was 28, 29, lasted maybe 3 or 4 years, but not sustainable.
Yep.
Not sustainable. So I needed a job that was kind of involved in the arts. So I was asked to teach a 3D design course at a community college. And that was in the spring of 97. And I've been at that community college ever since. So I quit the barista job. I quit running an art gallery as well, just so I could have one part-time job. And people think, oh, well, you teach, so you don't really make a lot of pots. It's like, well, no, I teach part-time. And they're like, oh, well, that's a great part-time job. Yeah, it is. But it's just a job. It's still a job. I'm still going somewhere. It's only 2 days a week.
Yeah.
And it pays well. I only work 30 weeks out of the year on the books, right?
Although if you're adjunct, we don't have to deep dive down the world of a higher education in the U.S. That's for a different podcast to solve those problems. But an adjunct position is not it's not like there's a big gap between tenure professorship and being an adjunct teacher, and we'll leave it at that as far as the benefits.
Yeah, it is something that I stopped pursuing the full-time gig at a certain point, maybe like 13 years ago. I got too close to a couple jobs, and I just realized it, and my wife helped me realize that it was really my ego that wanted those jobs. Mm-hmm. It wasn't ever going to really make me happy to be a full-time professor because I don't really get along with people that well. To sit on committees and come to a consensus, it does not. My mind doesn't really work that way. I see things there's no gray a lot of the time, unfortunately. So anyway.
Which is hilarious, kind of think in terms of art and how you would have been taught to learn in grad school. But
Right. Yeah, I know. I'm a contradictory being. I get that. Yeah.
I think the best of us are. Oh, shoot. So are you teaching still the 3D design or ceramics in there? Or?
Yeah, I usually teach 3D design once a year and then ceramics. So I have two classes typically every semester. Mm-hmm. And it works well. Yeah. So I teach Tuesday, Thursday, and then I'm in my studio Monday, Wednesday, Friday, usually like 7:30 or 8 o'clock until usually about 2. I find I go beyond 6 hours and I'm just no good. So I know people that spend 8 to 10 hours a day in their studio 6 days a week. And I don't understand how they sustain that, but it's just the way they work.
Yep.
But people sometimes look at me a little weird when I say, oh, yeah, I only work 4 to 6 hours a day in the studio. Like, oh, well, how do you get anything done? It's like, well, I don't talk. I don't drink coffee. I don't stop to eat my lunch no matter what it is. And I just go. Yeah. If people want to come in and talk to me, they come in and talk to me while I work. Mm-hmm. There is not a stoppage.
You're not picking up your phone and checking Instagram while you're in the studio.
Right. Yeah. No, I'll do a recording once in a while if something, gets to me. I'll have one of my rants and or just post other people's work. But I usually have that prepared ahead of time. Yeah, I everybody does their studio thing differently, right? And I don't think there's any real wrong way. I think there's better ways, but I don't think, whatever people come up with that works for them, it works for them.
Yeah.
And for me, it's having a part-time job. I don't want to ever have to support myself fully just off my work, because it's just, to me, it's monotony. Unless I could get into a big gallery that was selling, I could sell 10 pieces a year for $5,000 a piece, then maybe I would just do my work.
Yeah.
Right? That might change things.
Do you feel like having the part-time job also kind of provides, I think of it at least, as a little bit of that security net to be able to explore your work, and not, if every shop update or whatever system that you're doing, if you don't sell every single piece all the time, it's not like, holy crap, how am I going to pay the mortgage this month?
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's I've always seen it as a subsidy for my studio. Mm-hmm. It's what I need to do so I don't have to do things I don't want to do. Because otherwise I might be forced into making things I just don't like to make. And I can see it in my mind. I can see me sitting down one day and making 100 mugs, and they all have a buffalo on the side of them. And I'm only charging $30 a piece for them because I need them. I need to sell to my market in Buffalo. So everybody decides what they want to do and what they need. And I don't begrudge people for making those buffalo mugs. I actually know people who do that. As long as they're made well, it's all I care about. Do you.
Yep.
Do you. But yeah, but that is why I have a part-time job, is so I can do only what I want to do and when I want to do it too. I stopped jumping through hoops for people a long time ago. The last dinnerware set that I did was a nightmare. And I just don't want to do that again. I'll keep making plates. You can buy 8 plates. They're just not going to be identical anymore. It's the way it's going to be. It's the way it's going to be.
Makes working with porcelain a little easier, I feel like.
Oh, heck yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah. Just look, you find beauty in imperfection? Perfect. Have I got the dinnerware set for you?
Right.
Here it is. There you go. Let's see if you can walk the walk or if you're just talking that.
Yeah. This is 1,000% where, like, I've just got ratcheted back in my head to undergrad art school critiques of, like, if you can make up whatever bullshit, you can, like, you are good to go. Like, yeah. I actually had a 3D design professor who said, if you make a mistake once, just make it again on the opposite side, and it looks like you did it on purpose.
Yeah. I don't know about that, but
he was a woodworker, so I think it was a matter of you either have to scrap a bunch of material that you can't get back, or plug oak with maple and it looks pretty or something.
Yeah, I mean, I understand repetition, but I don't really. Or repeating mistake over and over. It's like, is that the definition of insanity? No, it's not quite, but kind of.
Pretty close. Pretty close, right? Actually.
Yeah.
Well, so what does your making practice look like now as far as being able to focus on what you actually like? Is there a schedule to that, or a routine to that? Or are you just kind of exploring what comes to you at whim and have mix and match of whatever you create? Or what does it actually come down to?
Well, it's gotten weird in the last year because I started using this found clay and really diving deep into found clay. So I wanted to put porcelain aside. People know my work for translucent porcelain and like things like salt and pepper shakers, egg cups, things, and toast racks, things people generally don't make. But I really was getting a little bit bored with doing all that stuff. Except for making cups. Like, I love making cups. Casts, like I was, and I still am slip casting porcelain. So what my week looks like typically is I'll set up and cast 13 cups on a Monday. And then I also make some blank cylinder forms on the potter's wheel with the found clay. and let those set up so that Wednesday I can clean up those 13 porcelain cups and then start to piece together some of these like vessels, because you can call them pots, but they're vessels at the end of the day. They cost too much to be a pot. And on Friday, I just kind of wrap everything up. And if I have time, I just play a little bit. Mm-hmm. So any scraps that I have throughout the week, I keep. And I'll just start moving things around, juxtaposing something against something else that I never thought of before. And most of the time it doesn't work, but some of the times Fridays are where I have all these big breakthroughs because I'm playing. I don't go in there with this set idea of what needs to be accomplished. I try not to go in with drawings too. I have a whiteboard a dry erase board that I draw on. And I'll wait till I get to the studio to actually draw the pieces that I have. So then, by the end of the week, hopefully I have 13 porcelain cups on my way to filling a gas kiln with cups. But the cups are still the bread and butter item for me as far as supporting, or as far as me adding to our household income. It's good to feel good about a sale once in a while. So yeah, but I do encourage people to take a day a week, a day a month, if you can't do a day a week, and just play. Just go in to the studio and actually do what your younger self would tell you to do. Go back a little bit and remember why you became passionate about clay. It wasn't making 50 cups with handles or 20 casseroles in a week. Maybe it was. I don't know. Not if you went to art school.
Yeah.
They would have discouraged that. What do you love to do? Well, take a day and do it. Yeah. Take a couple hours. Just take a couple hours and do it.
Yeah. I'm laughing because Francesca would be the one person who would really enjoy just filling a wearboard of 100 of the same pieces. But that's what happens when you start out in production pottery. That's right. That's his vibe. So that's cool. That's great.
Exactly. And again, I know a lot of people that do that, and I also know a guy, though, that will throw a row of 50 cups only to pick out the best one and scrap all the others. So that's a whole different way. There's so many ways to go, like I said, there's so many ways to go about this.
Yeah. And is the other 49 of his then, is that exploring? Is that play? Or is that 49 that actually looked really similar? I can picture.
Yeah.
I chatted with Sandy Lockwood, who I had the luck of studying under for a few months, and she was saying the idea of brainstorming, right? Which is throwing the board of 50, but having them, you're doing a different rim on every single one, or you're doing a different belly shape on every single one to kind of iterate and ideate around what are you drawn to, what's most interesting to take to the next place.
Yeah, because most potters I know don't draw. So drawing is what they do. Like they warm up, some potters warm up by making some cups.
Yep.
Right. But then where do you go from there?
Yeah.
And so is it a whole board of cups? But that's a sketchbook. You're sketching, to me anyway.
Yeah.
That's
absolutely
basically what you're doing. I would rather sketch in a sketchbook, go loaded with ideas. Yeah. And then but trying to make what you draw can take you a decade. You might have a great drawing, you can't make it. So I could see why, like, you make something and then you pick the best ones. Like, then you can be satisfied with yourself. Mm-hmm. If you're trying to make your drawing, you might just be completely unsatisfied all the time.
Yeah. Or my problem, which was the only solution I have, is to take a photo of something that I like and then try to mimic whatever portion of that form into a pot, which is even worse than a drawing.
That's tough. Wow.
I can't draw to save my life. So if I see like a curve on a plant or something somewhere, like, that's just impossible. I've never even tried because I know better.
But inspiration is inspiration.
Yeah.
And I look at a lot of architecture. You look at plants. We have all this information inside us. It's just mining that occasionally. And how do you mine that? If you have visuals in front of you, that makes perfect sense. You can go back, you can scroll through your phone, look through screenshots of stuff that you had or images that you captured. And that makes perfect sense to me. That's completely valid to go back and mimic those things, in clay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, what I love about your practice with the schedule, though, is that you've dictated set aside time. You know Fridays are when you're going to practice, which just makes me think of back when I was a musician. Like you had to set aside time to practice every single day, and that's something I've definitely lost and keep hearing again in all of these interviews and trying to get back to. Like, I had that training. I knew as a kid, you've got to sit down and practice the oboe for at least a half hour every single day, and that's how you got better. But you also were, I mean, you weren't necessarily playing so much in classical music, I guess. So this metaphor only goes so far.
Well, it's practice. Either way, it's practice.
Right.
So, you're throwing 100 cups, it's practice.
Yep.
You're trying to get better at something.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it's also that you're being intentional about setting aside time to explore. You're being intentional about having time that has no intent, no goal, I guess.
Right.
Which is makes my very type A systems oriented self. Yes, that's the right way to do it, right? Because to say you're going to do it, I think it just never happens. You get caught up in, at least for me, with client work, right? You get caught up in, I've got to edit this family session or this wedding, or I've got to respond to these emails. And I eventually, someday, by the end of the day, I'm going to practice whatever. And you just don't because you didn't prioritize it.
Right. And that's, I think I schedule most of my life that way too, though. And with ceramics people, we're all working back from a deadline. And I just have applied that to every aspect of my life, I think. And I think even when we have a son, and when he was born, it was all about, okay, well, I have until May. Okay. And then I have a show in September. I need to get everything done, though, between like January and April. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. So even 18 years ago, that's what I was doing. But it's also about having time to do other things too. So if I have a schedule, I don't just go have like a 3-hour lunch with somebody. I might take a half an hour to an hour once in a while. But there's other stuff I want to do. And other stuff for my own mental health that I need to do. Sitting in the studio frustrated is not good for me. And so I'll just leave. Yeah. There's some days, your career's like a radio wave. You have ups and downs, and it's getting through those downs, back up that wave that makes you successful, right? So how do you do that? How do you keep excited to reach that next peak? How do you keep motivated to get out of that trough? And so, again, schedule is something I need. It just can't be like, I think I'm going to go do this, and then I'm going to do that, and then, maybe I'll do this. Like, no, I know exactly where I need to be every part of my day. And I exercise a lot. I ride a bike. That takes a lot of time. And that, I fit that in my day too. Also time to be with my family. So everything's, I don't write down talk with wife.
For 45 minutes. That's all you get.
5:45 to 6:30. No, but it doesn't get that ridiculous. Right. But it does need to get a little bit. Yeah. People do look at me sometimes and they're like, you're crazy. You're just, you're nuts. Like, why do you do that? Why do you do that to yourself? It's like, because I need to.
Yeah. This is in my happy space. I'm like, no, I don't understand. I look at my other colleagues in the arts world going, what do you mean you don't have an office management system? Like, what do you mean you don't use a project management program? Like, how do you function?
Yeah. How do you know where to go next?
Right. Well, and also, how much time are you wasting sitting down in the morning going, okay, what do I have to get done? What about this? What about this? And then, I want to know in advance, like, especially if you're working with, for me, shooting weddings, it's like I've got 20 different couples at various stages of the process, and you kind of have to be managing all of that at one time. So I don't want to be not realizing, I was supposed to edit that engagement session until somebody emails me saying, hey, I thought we were supposed to get these a week ago.
Yeah.
So, well, I think this is also kind of one of the greatest, I don't know if the word misnomer is the right word to use or not, but correct me if I'm wrong, for everybody on the outside looking in, to those of us that are self-employed or even between the part-time work and your studio, like, I think everybody looks at it like, if I could only quit my full-time job, I'd have all this time and all this freedom and flexibility. And it's like, actually, in order to make it work for the long term, you do really need to have a schedule. Or, I mean, I find for myself, even explaining to friends, like, I know that I work for myself, but I can't just pop out to go meet you for an hour when you texted me 15 minutes ago, because like I woke up this morning with a list of things I had to get done.
Yeah. 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 That is interesting. What people do think. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. What I do is full time, because it's not just, it's not just being in the studio. It's being an artist isn't just a job. That's part of it. I mean, to me, it's just my life. It's the way I live. It is who I am. It's not just what I am. And there's a big difference there. Somebody might be, I don't know, a car salesperson, but that's not who they are. Because if that's who you are and that's your whole life, that's kind of sad.
Oof.
You know?
Unless it's a really good car.
Unless you're selling like 1967 Corvettes, Camaros, Mustangs exclusively, then I might say you have the best job in the entire world.
I could see like a, Italian selling Ferraris. Like, you could be okay with that.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Especially if you have a good inventory of them to sell. Yeah, I mean, sometimes people they have that like, oh, you're so lucky to do this. It's like, no, ask my family. Ask my family how lucky I am to do this, how lucky they are to have to be around me when things aren't going good.
Yeah.
It's so much easier just to show up somewhere and have someone tell you what to do, when to do it. Okay, well, it's this time. We're all going to stop work now and eat some food.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we're going to come back to work and work some more. Oh, now you get to go home. Like, and then you don't have to come in.
And you get a 401k on top of it.
Yeah, right. And you get money at the end. There's a pension possibly. Oh, we're going to pay for your doctor visits. There's no knowledge of like, if it wasn't for my wife, I wouldn't have health insurance, which then means I don't ride and race my bike anymore, because one wreck, like I wrecked and broke my hip, and it would have cost me about $95,000 if I didn't have health insurance.
Yep.
And I would have went bankrupt right then. Artists are generally one step away from bankruptcy. Either they don't have health insurance, they have a studio and they're inviting people to come work in it, and they don't have insurance they don't have business insurance. Or like you mess up doing your taxes and you're going to get audited. There's so many things that can go wrong because we don't, I talk more to my community college students about the business of art than most grad students will get by the time they graduate. Because I hear it from people all the time. Like, oh, how do you, where do you do your taxes? How do you get your taxes done? Really? You just got out of an MFA program. You don't even know H&R Block.
Like there's at least some ads.
Right. I know there's 50,000 pop-ups, right? So be careful what you wish for. Yeah. I think is because you might get it,
Yep.
Like, oh, I really wish I could be a potter. Oh, so you are willing to take a vow of poverty. Awesome. Good. You can be a potter. It's going to take you a few years of like eating ramen again. Do you remember eating ramen when you were 18, 19, 20 years old?
I remember discovering if you drop a raw egg into it while you cook it and then it cooks, it's like elevated ramen.
Yeah, no, I'm talking like undergraduate ramen.
Right.
I don't mean like, oh, let's go out for ramen tonight.
Oh,
ramen.
no. I just mean the eggs I bought at the grocery store. No. I just did that.
No, eggs. Who could afford eggs back then? Jeez, we're stealing blocks of cheese just to have a little variety in our diet. Oh, gosh. Yeah.
But it is true, like that question around how badly do you want something, right? Because I see a ton of people saying, I just had this conversation in a group text with friends of mine of like, oh, I hate my job. I wish I could quit my job. And for once, people say this all the time. I kind of was like, okay, well, why can't you? Like, let's go down this road of like,
Right.
you're fully capable of quitting, but what's the reason you're not going to, right? Is it this person happens to work for the government for like 15 years. So she's like, yeah, I'm not giving up that retirement. I was like, I'm in too deep.
Pension's only 3 years away.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's like, what are you willing to sacrifice? Like, how badly do you love it?
Yeah. And you need to decide early on what's going to make you happy in your life. So if getting a new car every 2 years is going to make you happy, well, you just have to work a lot harder at being an artist, at the business side of being an artist. And that takes time. So that's even more time. But yeah, it is about sacrifices. Like, what are you willing to do what you want to do? And that's it. So, and especially if somebody's like, I would love to quit my job. Well, you have a $500,000 mortgage. You have 2 cars. You got 3 kids under the age of 18 who all want to go to college. How's that going to happen? What are you going to do? You're going to just become a blue chip artist overnight? It's not going to happen. You're not sending kids to college selling $30 cups. I'll tell you that.
Yep.
So, yeah. But I think, people have reconsidered everything, right, in the last year and a half, 2 years. Everybody's kind of taken stock again about what matters to them, how they want the world to be, how they want their immediate world to be. And I hope that people are doing that a little bit more, that they are seeing that they can, maybe their partner does make enough money to support them both. And maybe they decide, I did want this job just because it strokes my ego. And I don't really need to be working 60 hours a week, my partner 60 hours a week, while, again, you have a kid or two who's going to daycare and like preschool, before school and after school programs. Because why? Why do you want to have kids then? Right. To send them to daycare? Doubt that was the reason.
Yeah.
Very much. And it's the same thing. Like, why are you working to make somebody else wealthy? And I just decided at a certain point, as probably you did too, that it's just not worth it. I would rather be impoverished and happy than wealthy and just angry at the world all the time for what I have to do to earn that money. And living for the weekend. Great song. Everybody's working for the weekend. I do, though. I take the weekend off. I don't go into the studio Saturday or Sunday. So I do, because again, my wife has a 9 to 5 Monday through Friday job. And I do like her. I don't just love her, I actually like her. So I want to spend time with her. That's the weekend. And, it is hard with artists, too, that we get asked to teach all the time on weekends. Like, why don't you come teach a workshop? It'll be Saturday and Sunday. It's like, how about Wednesday and Thursday? Because that really fits in with my family schedule. Because I don't know. I know it, I understand why, of course, people ask you to teach on the weekends.
Right.
Or why don't you come out and teach for a month or teach for 2 weeks? Okay, well, can I bring my family with me? Do you have accommodations? Oh, well, no, we can put you up in a freaking bunk bed. Right. With like three other artists. You get to share a bathroom too. Did we mention that?
Right. There's no curtain.
Right. There's no curtain. Right. Yeah. So when Ernie turns over in the middle of the night, you get to hear every little creak of the bed.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
But no, that's a great point though, because this is part of my acknowledgement of last year. Last summer was the first time I had a summer off in 11 years. Because I shoot weddings. So I work every Saturday of the summer. In the Midwest, that's when everybody gets married. And love the couples I work with. They're great, actually. Most people, oh God, weddings, bridezillas. No, I work with great human beings. But there's still something that grinds a little bit of driving down Lakeshore Drive on an 80-degree summer day in Chicago, and you're in a black cocktail dress because you're going to work, and everybody else is going to the beach. And yeah, okay, I can go to the beach on a Tuesday afternoon if I manage to get enough work done ahead of time, but I can't go with anybody.
Right.
right? Everybody else is at work. So that's great if I want some solitude and some time to read and journal and ponder life. But if you want to like go have a drink with a friend,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. But I think, I don't know that enough artists spend enough. Well, no, we have time to think, right? We have time to do a lot of things that a lot of people don't have to do. I've always felt like really privileged to be able to do what I do. I married the right person. We think about finances the same way. You know, we didn't go over our heads with some giant mortgage. Again, we live in Buffalo. Housing prices are cheap. I don't, I rent my studio space out from in a bigger building, and I've always had to deal with myself. I need to make every month what my rent costs at least. So the work is actually paying for the studio in that way. And, we don't live in debt. That's the other thing, too. We've been lucky enough that we don't have to live on credit cards or something like that. And so it does make life a lot easier when you do things like that. And to me, it's always been a privilege.
Yeah.
And also just the privilege that I walk through life with, being a white cisgendered man, is huge. And I do, and I do consider that with every, as part of like my privilege of what I do, that falls into that. And yeah, so I don't make a ton of money, but I think I'm one of the luckiest people in the world. And even teaching adjunct, like I don't have a lot of issues that a lot of adjuncts do, because I'm respected by my department chair. And again, I have the privilege of that, to not run into these roadblocks that other people have based on things that are out of their control too. Gender, color of your skin, sexual identity, whatever it is, I don't have those same roadblocks a lot of my friends have. And so again, when I say I lead a privileged life, I really mean that on every level.
Yeah.
A lot of people couldn't do what I do and live on what I live on. But again, it's life choices. Like, what do you need?
Right.
What do you need? And what are you willing to not have and to do to make that happen?
Do you feel a certain level of pressure around the pressure between working in order to make the living, right? So like the trade-off between, okay, I need to make so much work in order to keep bringing in work. And I'm asking this purely for myself, because I'm kind of trying to talk myself out of this mindset recently of like, I need to get XYZ done in order to keep the business afloat, in order to keep it running and functioning. And yes, some of those things you need to respond to an inquiry. If somebody wants to buy work from you, you need to answer them, right?
Yeah.
But to a certain point, I'm hoping there's got to be a place where things keep working, whether or not you're, logging so many hours for me at the computer, or, I mean, even for you at a computer with the business side of things.
Mm-hmm. Can you repeat that question?
Yes,
sorry.
I realized.
I lost it was at the
lost
beginning.
What the actual question was.
Yeah.
The pressure between, because I think there's a lot of independent makers out there who don't set the hours the way you have, in terms of feeling the need to put in those 10 or 12-hour days to work and keep working, because otherwise the business will stop, right? The work will stop coming in and you no longer will be able to provide for yourself. Like, how are you able to disconnect that a little bit? And if you have, how in the world did you?
Disconnect that. I don't know that I've ever disconnected that. I think all I've done is I took the advice of, I met a potter one summer at a craft show, because I used to do a lot of outdoor craft shows. And I mean, I'm one of the weirdos that actually likes doing those things, because you get to talk to people all day and you get to set up around some really cool people sometimes. Well, this guy's partner did Six Sigma training for like large corporations. And like, so he didn't ever have to work a day in his life. She was making bank, right?
Yeah.
But some of the principles he applied to his ceramics business, there was one thing that always sticks in my head, is that he only made what he needed to make quantity wise. Like if he had a dinnerware commission that he had to, it was 10 plates, he would make 11 I wouldn't have a big backstock. A lot of potters I know make 15.
Okay.
They go a third over so they can have backstock if people want it. He wouldn't do that because it's a waste of time. It's a waste of firing. It's a waste of glaze. So then when you break it down business-wise, it gets a little weird. And then the other thing was finding a market for what you want to make as opposed to making for a market. And that's hugely different sometimes. And a great example in our field of that is Clary Ilian, because I don't think she ever had a full-time tenured position somewhere. But she lives in a small town in Iowa somewhere. I'd love to visit someday. Huge inspiration to me as a maker. But she doesn't sell outside of that town. I think recently I've seen her work showing up at different spaces, but I think that's after years of people just begging her to do it. And then with my own work, it's just putting your toes into different markets. So I found over the last 25 years that my market is like an East Coast, West Coast market. Anywhere in between just doesn't work. Even where I live in Buffalo, it just doesn't work. It's not the right look. It's not the right feel. It's not the right whatever. So, and you can find a market for anything, right? I mean, just walk into like Target or Walmart and realize that they're selling everything that's there, they have sold. And you're looking at it like, oh my God, somebody would buy this. And somebody designed that too. That's the crazy. Somebody got paid to design that. Maybe a penny, but they got paid to design it. So finding a market for what it is that you are passionate about making, I think is hugely important. Mm-hmm. And also, like, is that a craft show? Like, where is your market? Is that like, are you going out to it? Or are they coming to you? Is it all online now, like it can be? Or are you needing to go to craft shows? Or is it like high-end craft gallery where you're selling $5,000 pieces? Because that's a whole different market. And the people I know who sell, though, through like higher-end galleries like that, a lot of the time they're tenured professors, which is tough. It's tough for me knowing the salary that some people pull down for working. Well, I don't want to get into that either because I'm going to piss off all my tenured faculty friends.
But it's also a little bit about lifestyle choice, right? Like going back to that, like
yes.
if you want to have a family and you're going after markets, the in-person markets, mm-hmm. do those things go together in terms of, are you going to drive around all of upstate New York every weekend from June to August? And then that means, whatever it means for the rest of your life. Or are you going to find your market online, because that can be done from wherever you want to be? And so if you want to, mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know too many potters that can live as nomads, considering how much equipment we need, but you see where I'm going with this.
Yes. Yeah. And that's the thing too, is that they don't set it up to make it easy for the artist. They set it up to make it easy for the client and for the market. Mm-hmm. So craft shows are usually only on Fridays and Saturdays and Sundays. Maybe they add Friday in there. Yeah. They don't make it easy to have a family anywhere near a craft show. But I know an artist she was breastfeeding in the back of her booth, at one of the highest end shows in the country. Yeah. And got to hand it to her. She was making that work. Yep. Drove there with the kid. Yep. Like, I forget how old she was, maybe 3 months old.
Oh, gosh.
And my kid, like, he wouldn't really want to come to craft shows until he realized that the other artists paid a lot of attention to him. And then it's like, oh, I have a craft show kid. Like, he's popping around.
Or there's food there.
Yeah, right. Yeah, there's food involved, or somebody's going to give him a mug for free just because he's a kid at a craft show. Awesome. More sympathy than anybody would ever get. Like, oh gosh, here, take this cup. We're sorry.
Have him out in the front of your booth, just looking really sad, like, Please
Oh, right,
buy my
yeah.
dad's pots.
Yeah, put him in like some Dickens-esque outfit. There's Oliver Twist standing out front with his woolen clothes. Shoes or holes in the bottoms of his leather shoes that are 2 sizes too small.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
is there anything you feel like, since you have been making this work for 25 years, when it comes to finding your market, this is an impossible question. I'm going to ask an impossible question, I think. But
Awesome.
people are going to ask, right? People are going to say, okay, that's all fine. I know I got to find my market. How?
How? Well, what I did was, and I'm not saying this is the right way, this is just what I did, was I just, I applied to shows at first, like everybody else does. I wanted to get my work out there. How do you get your work out there? Well, you need to have it seen. You need to apply to exhibitions. So I applied to like group shows, where you pay $30 or $40 to get your work looked at. We used to send out slides. You had to send a self-addressed return envelope to get the slides back, which you wanted because that was $5 worth of slides you just mail somebody. And you get the envelope back and you're feeling it like, oh, they're all there. You just throw it right in the garbage. Like they didn't take any of them.
Yeah.
All the slides are there. But I applied to different things around the country, and you get into shows here and there, like Kansas City or like Nebraska or like the Southwest too, like Santa Fe, Albuquerque, Seattle, like just all around. And if I sent the work there and it would sell, or I had a good response to it or got a good review and like, somebody writes an article about the show, then I would be encouraged to seek out like, okay, well, where is a craft shop in that area? Or on the East Coast, like where is there a craft show then that's outdoors that I can go do? Because I know that I sent 3 pieces there, they all sold to Boston. So I'm going to look for small shows in Boston that I can apply to. Now it's Instagram. It means a lot. And I don't know how to get somebody a following on Instagram other than curate your feed, make it look how you want it to look, have a separate personal feed, right? So you can show all those weird drunken dance moves at the wedding.
Or maybe just don't.
I don't know that they need to see that ever. But people post everything. But yeah, how to develop a market is just investigating. Sometimes it's boots on the ground at that market. Sometimes just mailing out work. And I know where my work does not sell, and I just don't want to go there ever again. And that's fine. In doing craft shows, I just always wanted to make my booth feedback or make my expenses the first year. And if I, usually I did that. I think I've done one show ever where I didn't make back just my expenses, and that's demoralizing, of course. But then it's also realizing it's just not the right place for your work. Understanding you make good work, but also you also don't want to go and put your work on Instagram and have that feedback be a gauge of quality.
Yeah.
If you ever just want your ego stroked, just put whatever you made that day up on Instagram. You're going to have at least 5 people say, "Oh, this is so good." And then you're looking at those people like, "Oh, dude, I thought I knew you." Like, I put this up here for, I just need
Mom.
to feel good. Right.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Mom.
Thanks, Ma. Yeah. Thanks, Grandma.
It's true.
You get a card in the mail 5 days later with a $10 bill in it. Oh, go buy yourself pizza, son.
You had to stick
I know
it
you're
down.
not selling that cup you just put on there.
That would just be my grandma.
Right.
Well, you did mention, though, that markets were what you used to do. So is most of what you're doing online now?
Well, I look forward to going back to in-person things. I just did an in-person thing, but I'm kind of done with outdoor craft shows. Just weather.
Yeah.
It's just the weather. I don't like bugs. So it's hard to, and then, you never know where you're going to get set up. So like, is there going to be like a sausage vendor next door, or like the whatever funnel cake person's going to be there, a deep frying basically lard all day.
So you're saying that's where you want to be, obviously, because the lines
that's exactly
of
where I want to be.
Yeah.
When I used to drink, it would be like the beer tent. Just put me right next to the beer tent.
At least you'd know you'd have people coming and seeing the booth a lot.
Well, they would definitely be walking past and looking for a place to set their cup of beer while they're eating their funnel cake and eating their sausage. The onions falling down their white shirt. So I guess I've been really lucky for the past, the past while to be invited to most things that I end up doing now. So like, pottery tours or pottery invitationals where a bunch of potters all go to one location.
Yep.
And they're just more fun. Honestly, they're just more fun. The people who come out to those things, they know what they're going to see. There's only 15 artists there. There's not 150. So they're coming there to buy. And I like that. It's inspiring to me to see that. And I think also people enjoy those environments more so than walking up and down aisles in craft shows. Like, oh, there's more, shit on the stick, and there's some more cobalt blue, and there's more, quote unquote raku pottery. So what else do I like to do like that? Last year and a half, March 15th, everything was canceled for every artist, every potter that I know. We all lost out on in-person teaching gigs as well as in-person sales. Even group and solo shows just ended because the gallery or museum was closed. So we all were scrambling, and some people did a really, really good job of getting online and doing online teaching. Deb Schwarzkopf probably did the best out of anybody that I know. Or no, did the best out of anyone I know. That's definitive. She did better. She was able to set up a situation where she could do Zoom workshops and had multiple camera angles and had repeatability. Also had a lot of people wanting to take them in the first place, which of course helps. But then a lot of us just switched to like online once every 8 weeks, just did a sale online and don't put up a lot of pots. So you still create demand, right? So it is still marketing and thinking about things that way. It's like, oh, I can put up 200 cups. Have I ever sold 200 cups in the sale before? I've only ever sold 50. So I'm going to put up 45, sell out in the first day, and then people are chomping at the bit for that next sale. So you're creating demand there. Yeah. And, raising prices a little bit, but also it was good not to have to ship to galleries. Saved a lot of money that way. It ended up that I had a really good year. Like 2020, doing my taxes, I had a really good year. But that was just because of the hustling and doing those kind of, sales I don't really like doing. Yeah.
The stuff that won't actually really stick around. It's not like, oh, we discovered a new way of doing things. You wouldn't have otherwise done it. Like, okay, that worked for the year. Now let's go back.
Yeah. Right. And so I don't know. I've just been caught up in my teaching this year, and I've dove a little deeper into that too. I have less students, so I have more time to spend with each of them, and I'm trying to actively do that. So that's taking a little bit of time or inspiration away from doing a sale, like an online sale, because it's a lot of work. I do 6 views of every piece, and if I post 60 pieces, that's 360 images that have to be. I finally learned how to group edit.
I was going to say we should have another conversation then. You and I can have a one-on-one conversation.
Right. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Oh, geez.
Yeah. But you make a great point about Deb being able to, dare I use the word pivot, but the resiliency that has always been needed, but especially last year, that I found particularly hard when you were thinking about making changes in life, to then have the resiliency to push through, to do something new, to figure out the tech, to do something else, when you're also just trying to survive the world being on fire. to the most extreme level in my lifetime, repeatedly, is no small. I mean, it's shocking to me the way some people were able to do new things, because I was just tired.
Yeah, people were tired. They were stressed. I think overall stress, and stress led people to different things. It led people into worse depression than they've ever been in. It led people just to be tired or unmotivated, to do anything, to put your life at risk to go out to the supermarket. Yeah, again, reprioritize things for people, but we are a resilient bunch. And I think there was a lot of support between us artists out there, like my peer group, I guess. I started being involved in a couple different text groups with some other artists, just so we could, mostly bitch about things, about how bad things were, but also just like support each other. And to see people like Deb really just kicking ass and doing what she does, okay, because she's an innovator. And to see somebody like that encounter this situation, being in Seattle, where it was worse than it was like anywhere at first for a long time. And to see her just rise above all that and realize, okay, well, this isn't just going to be a 3-week down. This is going to be years, and I'm not comfortable going and doing in-person teaching. What can I do? Because I still love to teach. Well, she came up with a whole, a plan, but within like 2 months, she was doing this. Like it was impressive.
Right.
And some people I know do not want to go back to in-person teaching, like workshops, because 2 things. One, it's more lucrative to sit in your studio and do really effective programming in that way. But also, I don't know how much people think you make teaching a workshop, but
it's not that
you
much.
only get paid. You get paid for the 2 days, 5 days that you're teaching. You don't get paid for that whole day sitting in an airport on a shuttle, packing all your stuff to take, shipping,
preparing the course.
So, you have 2 days of surround that you don't get paid for. Or when you do break it down, it gets kind of sad. It's like, oh, great, I'm making $20 an hour. What are they paying at McDonald's again now? In
what
New
are those
York
health benefits at Starbucks?
$17.50. Right, yeah. Right, yeah. So It's like I'm doing this to myself when it should be I'm doing this for myself.
Yeah.
And there's when you realize that, it's like, but I still love doing the in-person thing because you get a reaction.
Yeah.
But I think people are just going to start to pick and choose a little bit more. Maybe you don't want to do something that pays $900 for 5 days. Maybe you want to go to teach in Bali and make $5,000 for 5 days, and you're in Bali. Or Italy. I'm teaching in Italy. I'll pay them to go teach in Italy.
Well, Brian, I know some people. I could connect you with that.
Right. Yeah. Right. Okay.
I didn't. That's literally where I met my husband, at a ceramic school in Italy.
Oh, wow. Well, okay.
So there you go.
Well, congratulations. Also,
thank you.
Also, I'm sorry. That's great. That's really cool.
Shoot.
Yeah, good things do come out of those in-person workshops. They really do.
Yeah,
I've created
a lot of the same effect online.
I mean, well, yeah. No, maybe not. It would have been a whole different, kind of workshop then. But I know, a lot of lifelong connections come out of workshops. I've known people from my teaching my first workshop. I still keep in touch with a couple of those people. And I think that those in-person interactions are just so valuable to me. I did a workshop this past summer in Ohio, and it was a little bit cramped, but I felt safe there. And part of me feeling safe was that the people there looked like and told me that they felt safe. But also, they just needed it. We need that. We need interaction, especially artists. We don't live in vacuums. And anybody who says that they can do without human interaction, even me, is just full of it, because you can for a couple days,
Yeah.
maybe a week.
There's a reason the grocery stores got really busy all of a sudden. Like, it's because that's what people could do.
That is what they could do.
Yep.
That is exactly right. Yeah.
Well, hey, speaking of valuing your time, I know we are pushing the envelope here. So just to wrap things up, is there anything, this is a big question, so take it whatever direction you want, but is there something that you feel like you either repeatedly tell people starting out that you wish you would have known, or if you were to do it different? I mean, it's a hopeless question to say if you were to do it differently, but aside from skipping grad school and getting an apprenticeship.
Any advice? I guess not saying no to opportunities, or say yes to opportunities. I don't want to do a double negative. Just say yes to opportunities. If you're asked to do something and you think you can, or think you can figure out how to do it before the opportunity starts, then just say yes. Because when you start to say no because you don't think you can learn, you don't think you can do something, even if it's just helping somebody move their studio, if you say no, well, that closes that door, and that person knows you as the person who said no. You might not be on their list of people to ask to do something, or even just to be part of like a wood firing. Hey, you want to make some pots for a wood kiln? Oh, well, I only make earthenware pots. And no, that's not the answer. The answer is yes, I do want to be part of that wood firing. I'm going to go get 10 pounds of clay and make 5 pieces, because that's all they want anyway. But they want your participation. And then you get to meet this bigger group, this community. And that's with any type of firing. It's not just a wood fire, but wood fires, you need a community to fire one of those kilns in general. Yeah. So, not saying no. Find a good place to live, and it's safe, and find people to surround yourself who don't necessarily think exactly like you, but challenge you as well. Challenge your way of thinking, because that's the only way you're going to grow, right? Mm-hmm. And then find somebody to share your life with, to share all the ups and downs with. Because that it just, and I'm not, not like I'm coming up with this off the top of my head. I read this somewhere, but it just makes life more enjoyable, right? When there's somebody to share it with, somebody who you respect, who supports you in every way. Yeah, it does. It just makes things easier, makes things better. But that's really it. Simple. I think of like Maslow's, hierarchy of needs. Yes, yeah. And it's like start low, build up. Yeah. Don't think I'm picking up my first piece of clay ever, and I'm going to be self-actualized in 3 months. Starting, wait, now, from now.
I just launched an Instagram. Why don't I have 10,000 followers?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Where are they? Why is this taking so long?
My work is crap because no one follows me on Instagram.
Right. Yeah. And don't think that. That's the other thing. Yeah. You have worth beyond social media.
Dear God.
Oh, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time. Where do you want everybody to come? Now that we've just said, don't worry about Instagram, where do you want people to find you on the internet?
I would love them to find me on Instagram. Don't necessarily need to follow me, but there's some things on my feed you might want to look at. And that is Bryan S. Hopkins, Bryan.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And I will add a hyperlink and all the details and things like that. So awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks for talking today. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I really appreciate you asking. And yeah, thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
And that wraps up episode 207 here on the Maker's Playbook podcast. As you may have caught at the start of this episode, I'm pretty much just a random girl on the internet reaching out to potters and makers that I admire for one reason or another to ask if they'd like to be interviewed. But I do want to make sure that this little podcast spans out farther than my worldview of the maker community. So if you have makers you'd love to hear from on the podcast, I'd love it if you DM me at The Maker's Playbook on Instagram with their names or their Instagram accounts or whatever contact info you have. Or if it's somebody you personally know or just feel comfortable with, consider introducing us and let's start a group chat. That would be fantastically helpful. And as always, if you're enjoying the show, I would so appreciate it if you took 2 minutes to write a review on whatever podcast platform you are listening to. Once you do, share it on Instagram and tag me at The Maker's Playbook and Bryan at Bryan S. Hopkins, and that's Bryan with a Y, so that we can send our thanks. I have one more new episode for you next week before we take a little holiday / end of the year break. But let me tell you, there is a lot in store already for 2022. So if you don't want to miss out on a single episode, then be sure to go to makers-playbook.com/newsletter to sign up for our email list and be alerted when new episodes are released. Or, of course, you can just DM me your email address on Instagram. All right, my friends, until next week, go get back to making your dreams a reality. Together, we've got this.